1. Now we shall begin exploring our topic. Witch burnings. A detailed examination of history, causes, and consequences. Introduction. Witch burnings, one of the darkest chapters in human history, were the result of a complex interplay of religious fervor, societal anxieties, and legal structures that sanctioned the persecution of individuals accused of practicing witchcraft. These burnings were most prominent in Europe and colonial North America between the 15th and 18th centuries, during which thousands of individuals, predominantly women, were executed under accusations of consorting with the devil and performing maleficium. This essay explores the historical context, causes, legal mechanisms, and consequences of witch burnings, as well as their lasting impact on modern society. Historical context. Witch hunts and executions were not a phenomenon exclusive to one region or time period. However, the late medieval and early modern periods saw a significant surge in witch trials, particularly in Western and Central Europe. The roots of these persecutions can be traced to several developments. Religious upheaval. The Protestant Reformation and the Catholic Counter-Reformation heightened anxieties about heresy and religious purity. Both Catholic and Protestant authorities sought to eradicate perceived threats, including witches, whom they believed were in league with Satan. Legal shifts. The establishment of the Inquisition and the publication of legal texts such as the Malleus Maleficarum provided justification for the prosecution and execution of accused witches. This notorious book, written by Heinrich Kramer, laid out methods for identifying, interrogating, and convicting suspected witches. Social turmoil. Periods of famine, war, and plague led to widespread fear and the search for scapegoats. Accusing someone of witchcraft provided an outlet for community frustrations and reinforced social cohesion by targeting outsiders or marginalized individuals. Causes of witch burnings. Several interrelated factors contributed to the rise of witch burnings. 1. Religious and theological beliefs. The belief in witchcraft was deeply intertwined with Christian theology. The Bible contains passages that warn against sorcery. Church authorities interpreted such verses as divine mandates to root out witches. The concept of the devil as an active force in human affairs gained prominence during the late medieval period, reinforcing the idea that witches were his servants. 2. Legal systems and judicial processes. Many legal codes in early modern Europe allowed for the prosecution of witches. Notably, the Carolina Code in the Holy Roman Empire authorized torture to extract confessions. England's Witchcraft Act of 1563 made it a capital crime to invoke spirits for harmful purposes. Scotland's Witchcraft Act of 1563 led to thousands of executions in subsequent decades. Trials often relied on spectral evidence, forced confessions, and the use of witch marks as proof. 3. Social and economic factors. Women, particularly widows, herbalists, and healers, were disproportionately targeted. Accusations often stemmed from personal vendettas, land disputes, or social envy. Poor harvests, economic downturns, and disease outbreaks heightened fears, leading to mass hysteria and scapegoating. 4. Gender and misogyny. Approximately 75 to 80% of those accused and executed for witchcraft were women. The widespread belief that women were more susceptible to sin and temptation contributed to this imbalance. Texts such as the Malleus Maleficarum argued that women were inherently weaker and thus more likely to fall under the devil's influence. Notable witch hunts and trials. 1. The European witch hunts. Major outbreaks of witch trials occurred in Germany, France, Switzerland, and Scandinavia. Some of the most notorious included the Würzburg and Bamberg witch trials. These German trials led to the execution of hundreds of individuals. The Pendle witch trials in England, one of the most famous cases, resulting in the execution of 10 people. 2. The Salem witch trials. Perhaps the most infamous witch trials in North America, the Salem witch trials in colonial Massachusetts resulted in the execution of 20 individuals. The hysteria was fueled by religious extremism, local feuds, and flawed legal procedures. Spectral evidence played a significant role, and many accused individuals were coerced into false confessions. 3. The Scottish witch trials. Scotland experienced one of the highest rates of witch executions in Europe, with approximately 4,000 people tried and around 2,500 executed between the 16th and 18th centuries. King James VI of Scotland was particularly obsessed with witchcraft, writing demonology to justify witch persecution. Methods of execution. While hanging was the most common method of execution in England and the American colonies, burning at the stake was the preferred method in much of Europe, particularly in the Holy Roman Empire, France, and Spain. The rationale behind burning was symbolic. It was seen as a way to purify the soul and eradicate the devil's influence. Torture methods to extract confessions included the strapado, the rack, thumbscrews. Decline of witch burnings. By the late 17th and early 18th centuries, the fervor for witch hunts began to wane due to several factors. Scientific and Enlightenment thought. The rise of rationalism and scientific inquiry challenged superstitious beliefs. Thinkers such as Voltaire and Montesquieu criticized the irrationality of witch hunts. Legal reforms. Many European nations abolished witch trials. In 1736, Britain repealed its Witchcraft Act, and in 1775, the last legal witch execution in Europe took place in Switzerland. Skepticism from authorities. Increasingly, judges and political leaders questioned the validity of evidence used in witch trials, particularly spectral evidence and forced confessions. Consequences and legacy. The impact of witch hunts is still felt today in various ways. Cultural memory. The witch trials have inspired numerous works of literature, including Arthur Miller's The Crucible, which used the Salem trials as an allegory for McCarthyism. Gendered persecution awareness. The historical persecution of women as witches has informed modern feminist critiques of misogyny and systemic violence against women. Legal and human rights evolution. The injustices of the witch hunts contributed to the development of legal standards such as the presumption of innocence and the rejection of torture as a means of extracting confessions. Conclusion. Witch burnings were driven by a combination of religious dogma, legal structures, societal anxieties, and gender biases. While the phenomenon has largely been consigned to history, its echoes persist in modern forms of scapegoating, mass hysteria, and gendered violence. By studying this dark period, we gain insight into the dangers of unchecked fear and the importance of reason, justice, and human rights in preventing future persecutions. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe more contents like this.
waves are synced up to the sound of 88.9 Pacific Dreams.
Garden.